All right, guys, for this crew cast, we just finished doing a gym tour-ish type of thing where I went through some of the items and kind of told the story behind all those. What I wanted to do with this is my file structure when it comes to storing photos is horrible. So essentially they were just all in one giant folder. So as I was trying to find images of some of the equipment that we have out here that we've had for over 25 years, I'm finding and I'm remembering stories from all these different locations that the gym has been in. So I wanted to pull up and kind of expand a little bit on the gym tour that we did. So I have some files I'm going to pull up, some images that we're going to go over, which kind of talks a little bit about the history of the company, the history of the gym, the history of some of the products, and more so the gym. I'm leaning into this one. I could do another one that is just on the office, another one that's just on the warehouse. But as I was putting all this together, you can see how all these kind of tie together. So I'm going to start with the original gym that I had was in my garage. And this is while I was still training at Westside Barbell. And the intention of this was, actually wasn't in my garage. It was before I even moved to that place. It was in a shed that I had out back. And the reason was just for sled work, to have somewhere to be able to put, that's really all it was the sled. So Louis gave me a sled and he gave me this big ass 100-pound plate, which we still have out here, that I would use for, actually I didn't really use it at all because I was doing it in the gym or I was doing it as I was training clients. So it just kind of sat, didn't do shit, to be completely honest, that whole time until we moved into London, Ohio. And the reason for the move was the house that we were in, the equity was good. So selling was a good move to be able to do. I did not like living in downtown Columbus, which was another reason. Probably the bigger reason for me was elitefts was founded in 98. So it was mail order and there weren't a whole lot of orders, just put that politely, but there were some. And then when we would have the orders, I would have to package them up and then take them to the post office. And that alone was kind of a pain in the ass, especially in downtown Columbus where the post office was always busy and sleds, I remember, were part of this. Sleds were a pain in the ass, and especially if you had 2 or 3. So you had to carry them in, and then whatever else it was at the time. Sleds were probably the biggest item, a couple supplements and stuff like that. Where when I saw the home that a good friend of mine, Todd Brock, his dad, refurbished, what attracted me to the home was, first off, it wasn't in Columbus. Secondly, you can't see the front door. So if somebody was driving it, because the problem in Columbus is I couldn't just leave it out for the post office or whatever to pick up because somebody was going to steal it. This one here, you can't see the front door. So I would be able to leave the packages out, drive into Columbus, train my clients, train at Westside, whatever it is, and then drive back and not have to worry about it. So that was the biggest selling point of the home for me. There's a lot of other selling points, but that's really what it was. So during that home office time, which would have been 98 to 2004, the office was essentially was the office. Then on the wall that you don't see were plastic racks to where the inventory would be. This is fine. Yeah. There was that little TV there where a lot of the clips that you see that were from some of the old videos. I had a VCR over here, and then it would run to that TV. Then there was some device that would be able to strip the footage from the VCR to the actual computer and then be able to post the clips that way. I used those a lot for the seminars I was doing at the time to be able to put it in the seminar to be able to show how to do the actual movements. And so this wall that you don't see that had the inventory ended up being the spare bedroom and then it started to overtake the spare bedroom. So the gym at the time, with the focus there, was, so I had when it started, it was just the sled and a stretch trainer, the ab bench, the blue ab bench from Westside Barbell, and then, over here on the left, that's a decline sit-up bench, which I still have in the warehouse now. So most of what was in there was to train the torso, which were the majority of the extra workouts that I had. I forgot about the chest supported row that I had in there. Then there was a power rack, which really never got used because it was just extra workout type stuff like that. When we moved out into the Main Street location, the way that building was situated was, this was right when you walked into the building, and that's where I put the equipment. So at the time I moved out there, Louis had given me a reverse hyper. The ab bench he gave me when he moved from the Dimmer's location to where he is now. I think he gave me just about everything in here. The combo bench rack, the chest supported row, and the glute ham raise. And then the power rack was the one that I already had in there. At the time, we were selling power racks from Louis that he was getting from a company I'm not going to mention. They're no longer around, but all kinds of shit kind of happened with that. So we'll just leave that out of the equation. And so I would take the orders for the equipment, fax it over to Louis, then he would kind of put it through. When this shit show happened between Louis and the equipment he was working with, I had existing orders of racks and didn't know what to do with it, because the way I was kind of growing the business is the ship time for equipment back then was between 12 and 16 weeks. So I could get the order for the equipment, then I could use the money from that order, roll it into a faster moving product like books or some of the supplements and some of the other smaller things that we had at the time, and then hopefully sell those by the time the invoice came to be able to pay for the equipment when it was going to ship. So long story short, I have these outstanding orders and I have to be able to fill these racks. So I had to find somebody to be able to build the rack. So the person that I found at this time was building racks, which this is interesting, right? Because at the time, all the equipment that you would buy, the power racks would be in 3 pieces. And that was kind of standard. If it was 3x3 rack all the way down to a 2x2 or anything of that sort, the person I found to kind of fill this gap was building the racks as you kind of see them today in multiple pieces, which that's the rack that I had. And so that kind of filled that buffer. And then I went through a couple other companies until I found the one that we've been working with for the last 2 decades, which thank God, because it was just a clusterfuck before then. So that was kind of in there, and I couldn't wait to get that out because it wasn't as stable as what I would have wanted it to be. It did the job, but at that time, everybody felt it should all be welded. It should be 100% welded, which is so odd looking back on now, because that's not the case at all. And it didn't turn out to be that case. So this would be the front room when you walked in. So I rarely use this. If I used it for anything, it was just for the ab work, for the reverse hyper, for the extra workouts that were in between. So this would essentially be S1. And then when you walk through that area, this was the office, and it was just me. So it was just my office that was there. Then when you walk through there's a really small warehouse type area. So the way that this kind of all worked was, because when I moved in there, I could afford the rent, which was a few $100. What I didn't know at the time was that Wi-Fi was more expensive than the rent. So I couldn't afford the Wi-Fi and the rent. So I would take the orders, I would do the majority of the work at home. I'd print the shipping labels off. Then I would drive into this location, package the orders up, wait for UPS to come. Then when they left, I'd either do my extra workouts and some of the training. I was still at Westside at the time, so it's just a little bit there. Then I'd go back home and just kind of rinse and repeat. And this went on for 2005 to 2008. So it went on for several years. But what happened when so what happened was this front area ended up being the office area to where we put in cubicles. And that's when we brought Wendler in, and we brought in a customer service rep, and it was my wife and I at the time. So all this shit here had to move, and this door that's to the right led to the place that was right next door, obviously, and they went out of business. So we took the rent over on that, moved the equipment over, and then that became where the gym was. A couple things happened there. So this is one angle of it. I don't have a lot of pictures of that place, but at this time, I shifted my training to the max effort bench and the dynamic effort bench I could be able to do here. That way, because now I have employees as well, and I'm still not paying myself, by the way. So it was 4 or 5 years before we could pay it all. So I'm still training clients and going back and forth and all this other shit. But this allowed more time to be, so I could work and get more shit done while I was there. So this original bench rack I let go when we moved into this location. The monolift, that made it through a couple different gyms. The bar holder that you see here, that's still in here. The chalk box is still in here. The dumbbells are still in here. Up until last year, the power squat machine was still here. The only reason I replaced the power squat machine, the leg press, and the hack squat that we have out here is essentially just aesthetics. This was a bitch to move into this location, by the way. But it was a main driver for Wendler squat. That was one of the sessions that he had there, where when he added this in, because he was a quad dominant squatter, his squat just blew up. So it was also in this location is this monolift here was half owned by Louis at the time, because when we were putting meets on together, there was only 3, I think, that we did. He wanted to always have equipment, so if we ever traveled to a meet, we had enough equipment if the meet director didn't have anything. The one story I told was this image here of my son was at that monolift, and this was for a Powerlifting USA ad that I did, and I wanted something different. With our Powerlifting USA ads, I wanted it different than what everybody else was doing, because I had a couple years to where I was doing just the little quarter page ads of the products and the price, to the mail order ad, where what I wanted to do is I wanted to take out full page ads and drive people to the website, essentially just for the training logs and for the education. So one of the things I was doing at the time was I would take our sponsored lifters, get a professional photo of them in a meet, and use them as that main full page image, because at the time, no lifters were getting full page image in the magazines at all unless it was the cover. So my thought process is, if I can give them something similar to the cover, then I would have the opportunity to be able to get more top lifters that wanted to be part of the team and keep their training log on the site. So all those ads were of them to drive back in. And I do think that there were, for a while, we were doing 2-page ads in the center, so you could pull it out and then it would kind of be a mini poster. This one here was an ad that I wanted to put out that was different. That was just this image, and it said "Someday I Will," which is still a banner and posters that we sell now. But at the time, that took off to where you would see this in almost every gym that was out there. And to get my son to be able to do this, we had to put this rubber ball, like a playground ball, in his lap to be able to have him sit there long enough to get the photo. But it resonated because it's 500 pounds. It's a young kid, someday I will, grow up and squat 500 pounds. So it's kind of plays into all that. So it's Jim being Jim, and then Chris was customer service. So it got to a point here that we outgrew this. And then in 2008, we moved to Maple Street. And when we moved there, it was a little different, because where we were at on Main Street, everything was there. The warehouse was there, the gym was there, everything was there. When we moved to Maple Street, it was split up. So we took the bottom part of this building, which is like a house, but the bottom part of that for the office, then across the way was the warehouse. Then right next to that warehouse was a smaller warehouse. And on that warehouse door, S1 was the warehouse, S2 was where the weight room was. And the weight room there was this. So now there's a couple more racks that we put in there. The chalk bowl's still the same. The deadlift platform came in during S1 because when we hosted the IPA Senior Nationals, I wanted all new equipment in there. I wanted the deadlift platform in the warm-up room. And then after the meet, we had to break it down and then take it to that other gym that I showed you. And then it's still here now. So that's a piece of equipment it's probably 30 years old, but the power squat was in here. Eventually, I think I put the leg press in here soon after. So this would be the S2. And the issue we ran into when we started doing apparel, the blanks started to take up too much of the warehouse space. So when we first started to do apparel, this was the middle room. So when you walked in the door, there was a main office area, which was my office. There was like a tiny waiting area. Then there was this main office area to where this was after we converted it, but this is kind of where Wendler's desk was. Then we had a content person that was here. And then, so take all this out and just put desks in there. The apparel desk was here. So we're heat pressing apparel. He's working there, and it's not quiet. And then this started to become full of blanks. And it was also kind of a pain in the ass because we had to take the apparel, which would be dropped in the warehouse, move it into there, print it, carry it back out to the warehouse every single day. So it's when that got to a stage to where this was just too much of a pain in the ass, we realized we had to move the weight room out of there, and there was nowhere to put it. So we ended up putting it out in the middle of the country, which was at an old Tractor Supply shop, which I'll get to in a second here. But this was the gym after we moved the gym out. So when I talk about blanks and stuff like that, all this shit was essentially in that small office that I just talked about. So moving, and where some other photos from S2. This here was, the reason I put this in here is we have that floor press bench now. This is kind of where this comes from. So at this time we wanted to do floor presses but keep the leg drive in, because when you do a floor press, you're supposed to have your leg straight to be able to take the leg drive out. So I wanted to have the floor presses to keep the legs in the lift but to still restrict the range of motion. So we would take box squat boxes, or the adjustable boxes, put them beside the bench, and then put like an Aerodex pad on there to make it so it would be even to what a floor press was. I didn't know then, that 15 years later, we'd have essentially a floor press bench to where those kind of come out. So that takes us to S3. So this is that Tractor Supply shop. So the leg presses in there, more of the pieces of equipment came in. I always had this problem: till you give me more space, I'm going to put more shit in it. So that ended up being an issue where the bar wall started, where you see all these pictures here. If you look real close on this right hand side, you see this blue shit. This entire wall was just blue insulation. So we were doing content and seminars as well. Part of the reason why the Main Street location worked as well is I was doing seminars at the time, and the way that would work in Columbus is I would rent a chart room or the conference room of a hotel for the lecture, then use Westside for the hands-on. And that worked. It worked fine for a couple of years, but it's still, the logistics was kind of a pain in the ass because you had to get everybody from one place to the other place. And sometimes they're not even staying at the hotel to where that is, where that Main Street location allowed to be able to have everything under one roof. Then when we came out here, we were able to have bigger events, but the problem was the aesthetics were horrible, because of that plu shit. So my answer to that was to start taking and printing photos on my, whatever the fucking printer was in my office, of anything I could find. So some of them were old meat photos, some of them were Photoshop, or not Photoshop, but photo shoot things that we did. And I would just start stapling them on the wall. After a while, the pictures started falling down. So the answer to that was to put them all on poster boards and staple the poster boards up. And then after a while there, I started to get smart, and we put the poster boards on plywood and just fill that wall in. So the aesthetics of part of this outside of the training is no matter where you were in the gym, if we did a video, if we did a photo, or if there's a photo shoot, you knew where it was. So I would lay on the ground, I would sit on different places, take photos all over it to be able to see if our brand was somewhere in the image, no matter where you were, or something that represented that. So the photo wall was the first thing. It was to kind of hide all the shit, but to be able to help with the brand. The bar wall, which started at this time as well, was just to kind of hide that blue shit as well. And so this is kind of where the bar wall started. It's where the photo wall started. Some of these photos here were what became the Racking the Bar cover. So the book for that book. One of the problems that we had when we were out there, personally I had, was it was a few miles away from the compound, as Jim would put it. And so if something was to be delivered, or if I had to go out there, especially the deliveries, that was the biggest pain in the ass, because you don't know when they're going to drop it off, and they don't really tell you when they're going to drop it off. So I'd be out there for hours just waiting for, a piece of equipment to be delivered or whatever was being delivered at that time. And so a lot of my work time was done there. So this became my office outside of the office. I'd say during this time period of a couple years that we were out there, half my office time was there and the other half was in there. Something else that came about during that time period was the spider bar. And the reason for the spider bar, as I went into a little bit more in the gym tour stuff, was when I could no longer squat with the straight bar, all I had was the safety squat bar. So the safety squat bar eventually led to the SS yoke bar, which had better displacement across the shoulder, so I could use it more frequently, but it also became another bar that I could rotate in. So there was the safety squat bar, there was the SS yoke bar, then it was it. That was all I had. So I wanted something else to be able to rotate in. I was not able to use the regular rackable cambered squat bar. I don't have the shoulder mobility to be able to even grab that. So I stuck a yoke on that, and then that became the spider bar. That bar is still out here now. So this is, again, going way back, but you can see in the background here, I'm still trying to do some of the branding in any way that I possibly could, so people would know where you're at. So we only stayed out there for a couple years. And the main reason, well, first off, it was that pain in the ass that I talked about. The other was propane. I did this a few times, right? So when I moved into Main Street, I didn't account for the Wi-Fi, what that was going to cost and what those other costs were going to be. And it kind of bit me in the ass. So I had to find some in between to be able to kind of manage that situation. When we moved out to Mainline, which was that tractor place, I didn't account for heat, and the propane cost. And it didn't take long. It took one winter to realize there's no way that we can actually do this. And I can still remember at the time, one of the first ones that came through was like $2,000 for the month for something that we were not even in very often, maybe 3-4 times per week. That was it. But it's also the time when when I was in S1, there was a small crew that was forming with myself, Todd Brock, Jim Wendler, and a couple other people. And then when we went to S2, that kind of maintained where it was just bench work and then a couple other people, but it's still not like a main thing, just a place for me to train. When we went out here to that S3, that's when we started to get more people coming in to train, and where we had a conversation of, do we really want to do this? And part of the reason was, time-wise, I didn't want to put the time into having to go out there to open it up for other people. We still weren't going to charge them, but some of the people we were training with had potential prospects that could be good competitive powerlifters, and one of them would come in. So myself, Todd Brock, Kenny Patterson, I think Mike Ruggiero at the time, Joe Amato, a couple other people, sat down and we kind of talked this out. Like, what's this going to look like if we're going to do this? How's this going to work? Because there are certain things that, I don't want to say that we came up with rules, but we came up with things that we did not want to be rules. And one of those was, if they're a little late, not a big deal. It doesn't really matter how the fuck you train. Just these are squat days, these are bench days, and so forth. So that started to form there. A lot of the seminars and the events started to kind of build momentum there. Then when we were able to move back, and when we moved back, the way that happened was the warehouse and even the S2 location that we had, they were all converted from being a lumber yard. So what the building owner decided to do was enclose this area here of that open lumber yard into another warehouse that was going to be our weight room. So it was going to be, the S4. So that allowed us to bring all the shit back into this location. It became interesting because all those images that you see here were all those pieces of plywood, and some of them were not on plywood yet. So we had to take it all and put it on the plywood to be able to move it over into this location. So that was the first thing that we moved over there. And then there's a video here that I'll have Noah kind of put in of my son giving a tour of the gym after, this is when we left, but there's one of him giving a tour of the gym when we moved.
Good evening, everybody. Everything around here is a little different. We moved into a new workout house. This is all the stuff there is. Over there, all the way to here is the pictures. And with these are the letters. And over here, all the way up there is the TV. We need to remember. All the way over there. I don't know everything. These are the workout so that's the weight team. And that flag is the USA flag. The flag. That one. Oh, there's more. No. There's a way here. Yes. That's right. Next 0. Walk. Hold on. This is a computer. What's that for?
And then this location also is where the events that we were having at the time started to pop off because we were able to bring more people in. There's also a video of Juji Mufu we're talking old Juji, doing some deadlifts, which we can throw in there. My son giving a tour of the thing. This is also when we put in a couple other things. We put in the signature power rack, which we still have out here now. And then we put in the table that I'm sitting at right now. So the podcast table. So that was one of the first things to be able to go in there. What I wanted there was to have a gathering place because anybody that's training a crew or is training gyms for a long time, you spend a lot of time there. There's a lot of hanging out. So you hang a lot. And I wanted to have an area where we could just fucking hang out, talk shit, stories and all the other kind of stuff. Eventually that ended up leading into, answering some of the Q&As that I was doing at the table and, becoming the podcast that you see now. But the table goes all the way back to 2013 is when that came in there. We were at this location until 2017 to the location to where we are now. There's the one video that's in here where after we moved everything out, which was, to be honest, kind of depressing because there were so many memories and so many hard training sessions that were in there. And it was hard to leave. Let's just put it that way. So it was hard to leave. And I love that place. I still talk about it now. The mice and just all the critters and shit that we'd have to deal with. And it was brutally hardcore. It was.
fuckers don't. If fuckers that don't get what the void, what the fucking void is all about. Just did a max set. Strip set leg presses. Yeah, I'm all fucked up.
There was no bathroom, so you had to pee outside. We had these strongman stones, so you had to pee on the stones, puke outside and so forth. So it's me kind of closing out the chapter here, which this was the last time. I wanted to take the photos, by the way, all the picture boards and all the plywood. I wanted to bring that with us over here, but that got voted out, which we ended up creating vinyl strips, which are the images that you see now, and then walking into the new place. And as I walk through here, I say something about fuck arm day, which is kind of funny with that. Fuck arm day. This fucking picture wall is giant. We'll be getting the other walls done here shortly. And so as I was going through these photos, other things kind of popped up. And when I was working with, it was either Justin Harris or Shelby Starnes and doing a shit ton of cardio. At the time on the website, we had something that was kind of like a forum. It was a Q&A. The difference between our Q&A and the forum is that there were no threads. It was a question, answer, done. So in each, we had training logs. We had all these other things that were a part of that, where I wasn't able, with all this cardio that I was doing, to actually answer the training logs or answer any of the questions. So I would print them all out, then I would answer them while I was doing my cardio, which was this From the Mill series, which is either on our channel or on our archived YouTube channel. And then when that ended, that training block, whatever you want to call it, ended, I found it way more convenient to answer the question that way than in written context. So I simply just did the same thing, but sat at the table and answered the questions. And we called that table talk. And that was before it was even the podcast at all. This would be that nationals. So that was the warm-up room, and that was the deadlift platform. And again, that's still in here now. The storage racks, the plate storage racks that we have out here, we supplied all the equipment for whatever WC Worlds this is. Too lazy to look up what the date was. And so there were 4 of these. There were all the monoliths. And we also outfitted the entire warm-up room. And the thought process in this is that it was going to be a good business decision, because the worst case scenario would be we would be able to sell everything that we put there, at least at our cost, at the event, and not have to, even if we didn't sell anything, or get anything from it, it would at least be a break even. That was not the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario was we weren't able to, we sold maybe one maybe 2 pieces out of all this, and then had to have everything packaged and shipped back, and then took years to sell everything out. The last orange monolith we had out here up until 2 years ago. So it took that long. Now those weight storage things, we sold one. So the one of the original ones is still in the office. The other 2 are out here. I changed the plates to red so it would match the equipment, are still out here. So and they fit out here. I don't want to sell them. They have a reason, for being out here. But it's also a reminder, to me, to not make stupid fucking business decisions that take forever to kind of recover from. The one thing that I covered during the video was I get asked a lot about when I squat, I have this mat or this rug on the mat. This rug goes all the way back to West Side, and it even goes back to even before this West Side. It goes back to the West Side before Demhurst, where Louis had a bunch of those in there. But when he moved from Demhurst to the location that West Belt or whatever it is, I asked him if I could take one of those mats. I'm not nostalgic in any way, but I kind of was for that. And so that's out there. And the funny thing with this is when I came into West Side, I asked, what the fuck are they even for? Because of the box squatting. And he said, so you don't slip on the box when you're sitting back on the box, which never really made sense to me because I never saw anybody ever slip on a box. But it did start to make sense because all of our boxes that were there were wooden, and you could get splinters. I know for a fact, so you throw it on there for that. It also helped a ton with the glute ham because it allowed just a little bit of slippage to be able to get into a better position for that. So with some of the items that I covered that were out here, the ab bench was something that Louis gifted to me when he moved because for my extra workouts. So there's probably 3 decades old. The chalk box is a couple decades old. I went over a lot of this other stuff, but a lot of the stuff that's in our gym now is over 20 years old, maybe some of it even more so than that. A lot of the pieces that we have out here, racks, monoliths, hell, just the leg press, the hack squat, and the monster squat, I only replaced those for aesthetic reasons last year. So the racks were for the same reason, just because we discontinue and we bring in a different one for aesthetic reasons. For all intensive purposes, everything that I had in S1 and more specifically S2 and every piece that we've ever had could still be out here and functional. And so that was parting with some of the things over the last couple of years was kind of rough because I liked having it out here and the fact that it was over 2 decades old and that I've done zero maintenance to anything and it still all worked perfectly. That's a selling point for the equipment that we provide. So but at the same time, things, we tweak things, make things a little bit better, change things a little bit more. So it's a lot of the pieces that I had out here were our last prototype, and then we tweak one more thing and bring it. And then that's what we go to the customers, to where the last few years it's been replacing a lot of those older pieces with the newer ones that we have just for videos. And this is still a showroom as well to be able to put out there. So this was a little bit going down memory lane with some of the products, and from the gym side, what would be interesting and fun to do, because when people come out and have me do gym tours, either for their channel or for whatever reason, it's like 10, 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes of just a broad overview of shit like the picture wall. I mean, some of the things that really kind of matter. But we spent time going through a handful of pieces, handful of pieces, and kind of telling stories about each one of those. I could do that with pretty much everything out here. So if you guys, the crew members, the ones that support the podcast more than anybody else, if you guys ever see a piece or you're ever interested in anything in any of the videos or anything that you see out here, let us know. And then we'll take that and then we'll create that as one of these other follow-up videos if this thing goes over well, the gym tour video, because I've seen enough gym tours on YouTube that I don't really care to watch them anymore, because who cares? Where this is a little different because it's not necessarily a gym tour. It's the history and the why, you know, behind everything is out here, why everything is out here, because everything is out here for a reason. The reason could just be nostalgic. It could be for a training purpose, or it could just be, fuck, I don't know, for any reason. I can tell you if you ask. Let's just put it that way. So thank you guys for the support. We're going to wrap this one up. We're done.
All right, let's go.
Okay, so I got this idea, and I think it's gonna be fucking awesome. So you take the ammonia caps, bust them in a little reciprocal.
Receptacle.
Yeah. I have no idea what this thing's even for, but this could be an awesome fucking ammonia inhaler. Oh my, Jesus Christ! This asshole's good! Oh my God! I didn't expect that! Holy shit, try that! Stick your nose in there! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh, come on, stick it, inhale! Is it dead?
Oh, fuck, no.
Oh, see? It fucking gets you! That fucking gets you!
Squeezes out of the sphincter.
Oh my God!